All right, well, welcome back, everybody. We got a little update on Matt's son's soccer tryouts for James Madison University. This is a session that is ambitiously titled with lots of big words about like the future of innovation and in the industry. What we're hoping for is a conversation about that sort of links to some of the things we've talked about earlier, including things like research and innovation, but sort of talks about what we have been seeing, these three have been seeing in their respective roles, trends in the industry, and opportunity spaces for exploration in the future. So we've got some questions we'll start with. We're hoping to also riff on what we've been talking about all day, and of course, opportunities for you to ask questions as we go are open the whole time. And with that, I'm just going to ask our three panelists to introduce themselves and tell us a little about what they do right now and see where that takes us. So, Ian.
Hello, Ian Hunter from Shallot Collaborative. We're in San Francisco. Our company designs all kinds of performance spaces, entertainment venues, theaters, arenas, museums, amphitheaters, anywhere people gather, I think is kind of what I usually say in my elevator pitch. I've been at this about 25 years. I graduated from here and with an MFA in 2007. And, yeah. The mic dropped out. I don't know. In sound is my original background, and I've kind of since still do a lot of that, but now have kind of a broader engagement that looks a lot more like architecture than theater. But, yeah.
Hi everyone, Kasey Allee-Foreman, she, her pronouns. I am in my full-time job. I'm the associate producer of University Theater at the University of Oklahoma, which is the main stage producing wing for the College of Fine Arts there. And we do 9 shows a year, ballet, contemporary, and a young choreographer showcase, 2 dramas, 2 operas, 2 musicals. We are a BFA only training ground for design and production. I have really brilliant students who will be your future employees. And then with my other hat, I am the president of USITT. We've talked a lot about USITT, but just to be clear, USITT is a member organization for backstage theater technologists, managers, designers. Right now, we're sitting at about a membership of 6,000. We hold a large annual conference. One of the things we're really proud of is that our vendors, our manufacturers are also members of USITT. We have organizational members and individual members, and we value serving both. So.
My name's Matt Jackson. I wrote it down because I just got the job. Portfolio director. So what that is I manage a certain type of job with my project managers who work for me. And currently, I'm everything that's not an amusement park. So museums, live events, we call it real property casinos, permanent installation, restaurants, any of that kind of stuff. So I take everything that's outside of our Disney and Universal family, which is probably 70% of the work that we do is in those two. My jobs usually last a year and a half, where the Disney ones now are 3 years because we do a lot of R&D for them. We're located up in Cow Country, about 3 hours north of New York City, and I got my master's in 1995.
Thank you, Stephen.
So I've been doing it for a while, and I started in New York City and then kind of moved around everywhere. And through birth of my son and my wife's job, I've now moved to upstate New York.
There's a lot of turn of the century people up here. I hate that we can say that now, but we can. Thank you for sharing that information. Part of the goal today is, or for this part of the day, yesterday we talked about ethics and standards and codes and how to incorporate that. Earlier today we talked about sort of collaborative partnerships with industry and sort of innovation and research. This last chunk of the day is really about how, ideally, how academic institutions can think about effectively preparing students for the world that they're going to face. Like, what do we need to be teaching students? And so with that in mind, and the fact that it, as we've all talked about today, this industry is evolving and changing rapidly under our feet. I would love to hear from each of our panelists about a technological development in our industry during their careers that surprised them, that they did not predict. And if I can, I'll just start by saying I did a lot of sound work when I was an undergrad. I learned to edit on reel-to-reel tape. We sort of knew that digital was coming, and it was in the mid-'90s, early '90s. And I distinctly remember that FireWire, those of you who know what I'm talking, some nods around the room, this was going to be the wave of the future. Every office, every studio was going to be FireWire everywhere. That's how we were going to move audio around. Someday we'd move video around that way. And the Performing Arts Center on campus got a new console that was sort of, one part of it was front of house, and then where the microphones got connected to was on stage, and they were connected with an Ethernet cable. And we were like, there's no effing way. You can't shove that much audio down an Ethernet cable that fast. There's no way. And yet here we are, right? And FireWire is a thing that only some people who are old enough in the room know what it is. And everything is over Ethernet or wireless, right? So that absolutely, I did not predict and gobsmacked me. So whoever wants to start.
I'll start. My background is costume design and lighting design. I am not an engineer by any stretch of the imagination, unless you want a really three-dimensional costume. But with lighting, we knew LED was coming, right? We knew that for a long time. And I think most of us sort of scoffed at the idea that it would be implemented at all quickly. It's going to be too expensive. We can't replace all of our lighting instruments at one time. They don't match together. So it's just not going to happen. It's going to take forever. And what surprised me was two things. One was that our mass market home light bulbs also underwent the same change. And the whole concept of ecologically, we're going to phase out incandescence. That was surprising to me. And then I will say this, super smart decision by lighting companies to understand that our fear was we can't afford to replace all of our lighting instruments. So the innovation of being able to just switch out your incandescent base and still use your whole lens ellipsoidal body allowed that change to happen so much faster than expected. That I think that was even more than any of the innovations in automated lighting that were surprising to me, because once we went down that path, that was just going to keep developing. But a whole industry shifting over to LED lighting, really, the pace of it surprised me for sure.
You should go next, all right. I will say I second what Rich started saying, that we don't really have sound systems or lighting systems or automation systems. They're just a data network that looks like a sound system and a lighting system. So the proliferation of the IP protocol into every single thing is probably what surprised me the most. And then following on that is when I go to spaces we work in, the kids, let's say the kids, do not really want any kind of control console or anything anymore, just not their back. So there's usually a Stream Deck, buttons that are programmable for $200, and their laptop or a tablet maybe, but this messing around with knobs and faders and things is like not in, they're gonna be in the future, it feels like. They're just not being used much by the generation coming up. Now, I would not know what to do without,
Right.
things to run, but, yeah. So I'd say those are my two.
I was going to say, when AutoCAD went to Windows, but
Did not see that coming.
That was something that I loved, not something that I didn't expect. I would say for me, working for Adirondack is not realizing are not expecting the rest of the world to be where we are or close to where the U.S. entertainment universe is, as they are and how fast they got there. China was so far ahead, even with all of their issues, and we were just talking about this at lunch, and then the Middle East. And especially in China, in the Middle East, it's the Westerners come and bring it. And since the Middle East, technically, there are 10 Dubaians, right? Everyone else is from somewhere else. So they're the nationals, that's not their thing. In Saudi Arabia, there are more, but in China, the government just said, you will learn. The government said, you will bring a U.S. company in, and you will partner with them, and I don't care if you think they're stupid, because we've taught you that your whole lives. You are going to learn from them because this is the only way to do it. And then when I started working in China 20 years ago, the speed at which they're able to do 85% of what we can do. Now, stuff where Tate is pushing the envelope, they're behind, and same with PRG, right? But basic amusement park scenery, theater scenery, any of the theater design, theater technical teaching, the people that we were hiring could work in the United States. They couldn't speak English, but that didn't used to be the case 20 years ago. Used to be, here is a hammer. Don't put it in your mouth. Seriously, like don't hit your friend. You should have shoes on because your sandals, the thing's gonna fall. And now they're cloning Navigator, which I'm sure, and
We love that.
yeah, I'm sure you do. So that is the spreading of that outside of the Western universe happened much faster than I thought it would, which has made life really interesting in the last 10 years. We don't get the same calls, and we have a much more educated client base. Not that we were taking them to, but we had some room to learn on the job, and now they don't want us to learn. They want us to do the thing and get out, and we're done. So that was probably it.
Can I say, oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Can I say one thing that I thought would happen and still hasn't? How are we still using DMX on the fixtures?
Right?
Why is there not a network check on these stupid things? I don't know. I thought with LEDs, that would be the time when we would
Right?
switch over, but.
Yeah. Nobody's written the standard.
I was going to say, I think that's because
That was yesterday.
DMX is the standard, and everybody else is using their own proprietary over Ethernet.
Right.
And that's the challenge, right?
There you go.
Yeah.
I'm trying hard not to respond to the fact that I now see undergrad students who I have to say, the hammer doesn't go in your mouth. Because they've never seen, and I don't mean that derogatorily, they've never used a hammer.
Right.
They've never had a class where they had to touch a tool. And that's a little frightening in the context of what you were just describing, and suggests we as educators, when I talk about teaching, it's a transaction, right? Like, this is where I want to get you to, and this is where you start from, and you have to help me help you get there. But in a lot of cases, students are starting at a much lower threshold than we had expected, right? Sorry.
But no, but a lower threshold on certain things.
Some things, yes.
And above my head on other things, right? On the ability to interface with the technology. Such a comfort level, right? And I think all three of us said the pace with which things have changed. That is the biggest change over the course of our lifetimes. Those kind of changes used to happen so incrementally, and we just see it. It's not cumulative, it's exponential. Once one technology comes in, the leap to the next one is so much quicker and easier. And then a leap to the next one is so much quicker. So it's when we say we feel like, how do you possibly keep up with, whether it's the standards and practices and protocols, or whether it's just keeping up with what's the latest gear and what's the newest innovation, that pace is exponentially faster than it was in our youth, in our early career.
There are thoughts that I have about technology and screens and understanding what's happening behind the screen that maybe we'll circle back to, because I think there's some interesting gaps there. But on the flip side of the question we asked before, are there technological advances or any kind of advances in this industry that you found that you were able to be a part of, or could sort of get in on the ground floor and really sort of get your hands dirty as it sort of grew along? Does that make sense?
I'll go one better. I was in on the beginning and now I'm out. Right, it has gone beyond, because of where my career has gone, I started AutoCAD 1. Actually, I started CAD Key, which was even before AutoCAD, the first AutoCAD. Stop laughing. And so 12 came out, which was Windows. And as you talk about it, that's why everything is subscription. It used to be every year and a half or two, AutoCAD would screw you and you'd have to buy all the stuff again. And you got a book, and then they'd have 10 new things they wouldn't tell you about, and it still crashed a lot.
We'll edit this part out when we're looking for a sponsorship from Autodesk. But
And we're an all Autodesk shop, start to finish. So
Yeah.
don't get me. I love my friends at Autodesk. But then I moved into Windows-based AutoCAD during doing tech design. You learned 3D in AutoCAD, which everyone who's ever worked for me says, "What are you doing?" We still do it a little bit. I still can draw faster in 3D AutoCAD than I can in Inventor, and that's what I missed when we switched to parametric modeling. I was not in a position to learn it again because I had 20 people working for me. I knew how it worked. I knew what it was. I did my job as a manager to know how we could use it and how we could implement it, integrate it into what we're. Then Fusion came out. Then Fusion 360 came out, and then Fusion came out again. There's Revit. And so I know how to use all of those, or I know how to instruct people how I need them to use them for us to be successful. I cannot draw in Fusion. It scares me how the whole thing works. And I watch the young.
Yeah.
Now, what I bring to the table is I know how to build the table. So I can tell you how to do the table. Please, you use the tool, right? And I know the tool does these 10 things. But it's interesting. I guess it's because I'm old that I started when it was brand new. And when I started at Hudson, Billy, no one remembers his name. Yep, Billy Taylor. I sat next to him on a computer, and he was hand drawing 15 times faster than I could ever imagine. He was doing show decks, and I was like, okay, so the return goes up there, and he was done, and it was on the floor. And so now I feel like he does. I can do all that stuff really fast on going like this or in regular AutoCAD, but the way that new information comes out can now be used in so many more places, right? My model goes into a Revit model for a huge building, and that way sprinklers and everything you see in this room can be put in the right place because my scenery is in the right place. And in the old days, it was Mylars and going like back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. So yeah, I think that was interesting to be part of something and then sort of getting out of it.
Sure.
Because of where your career is.
Sure. Thank you.
Do you have something?
I say the development of audio over IP. I got to use that and mess with it a lot and kind of in its pre-release formats and what became Dante finally in some old boxes, and everyone's like, what's this thing? What is all this doing? And CobraNet and all of that era of stuff. So that was eye-opening at the time and a piece of junk when it first came out. It's useless that nothing arrived at the same time, which is very important in audio. And so yeah, it was kind of cool to see how it got. All those things got fixed, and then we got rid of CobraNet, and Dante came and fixed most of the things. Yeah.
Sure.
Well, I will go to my costume side of things, which, costume hasn't really had innovation since the invention of the sewing machine, theoretically, when I first started. And I'm a draper, I'm a drafter, and to see CAD come into drafting, to see CNC cutting come into place, to see digital sublimation and the creation of fabrics that you can dream up. I think that is really interesting. And also to even see some of the materials that have been developed, maybe for our industry, maybe for other things, thermoplastics and what have you, and now 3D printing into it. What I never, in my youth, would have thought that anything digital was going to come to costuming. And it's so additive and wonderful, while still maintaining some of that original, analog costuming.
Only 5 years ago when we formed the Fusion Studio, I was reaching out to costume faculty who were saying, well, there's no reason for us to be part of that, right?
Right.
And only 5 years later, here we are.
Yeah, I remember I was fortunate enough to get a tour through Disney's costume production down in Orlando. And, and they had the CNC cutting table and they had the sublimation. And it was just like, I'm never going to have access to that. We can't afford that. And it's somehow, again, I also think the mass market sales part of what industry realizes when they have something spectacular, how to make it profitable also makes it affordable.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm debating which of the next two questions to do first. So I'm just gonna guess, throw the dice out there, and say, as things have changed so quickly, right? And Matt, you sort of addressed this a little bit already in terms of your Autodesk journey. The fact that things sort of change from underneath your feet, right? And the rug gets pulled out from underneath you. For each of you, what in your professional or academic preparation made you ready for that? Allowed you to be able to sort of pivot and flex and move, or suddenly didn't let you? Or was it, I'm with you, I feel like I've aged out on a lot of technologies and I just, my brain doesn't move fast enough to figure it out anymore. But maybe there are other things that were in the way of you being flexible.
I would say the things that prepared me to best to deal with that were things that were unrelated to any platform or technology or gear or software, and that would be technical writing, let's say more broadly, communication style, and knowing how to collaborate. I know that is a common theme with theater people. It's a skill that's very seemingly less and less available in the world, but those two things were probably the two that gave me the most tools to deal with all this change.
Can I follow up on that and point out that I think it's interesting that you talked about audio over IP and audio networking, and you didn't mention any academic preparation in IT, computer science, networking, and yet you felt prepared to embrace that. Can you talk a little bit about that and like how technical writing and collaboration or other things that you didn't mention were able to help you overcome a lack of training in the specific technological area that you're sort of faced with every day?
Yeah, I guess maybe to say it broader, I feel like I came away from this program specifically with an understanding of how to learn and how to find information and where to go and how to do it. So it didn't really matter what the topic was, but here's trade magazines that you can read to find out about this stuff. Here are people who know these things that you can call. Here's a guy at Crown at the time had a bunch of CobraNet stuff, and they were in Indiana, and we went up there, and they told us about it. So just understanding the tools to know how to learn has served me very well, because in the 25 years I've been doing this, it's completely different. There's hardly anything that was true then is true now. So.
Sure. We're going to edit that and use it for recruiting for Purdue later. Thank you. Kasey.
Yeah, I think about this a lot interacting with my students. I like to know how things work. I like to take things apart and understand the inner workings of it. I was the child that always took apart their mechanical toys and put them back together. I like to understand the how as well as the why. And I actually think I'm so fortunate. Okay, I'm going to tell a really funny off-color story. I worked my way through undergrad, loading in rock concerts at Clemson University. I could drive about an hour and a half. I could go load in a show, see a concert, go back to school the next day, pay for my tuition. And I remember the first tour that came through. It was Pink Floyd. And I saw my very first VL4. And there was a specified technician that was the only one who was allowed to touch that light. It was all about proprietary information. He was very cute and offered to show me the inside of the light. So, how's that for a pickup line? But that then made me so want to work with automated lights. And of course, that was back when, you know, you had a light board and you had to program so many channels for every function with your DMX. My students don't have any idea what goes into what's already programmed into the board for them. And so that's what worries me about innovation in the future, is a lack of our students who are so technologically proficient not understanding the underlying how or why, and not wanting to push the gear to do more than it already does, just here, factory standard. Like, I want them to take that apart and use it better and hack
Sure.
it. Come
Sure.
on.
Sure. I think we'll come back to that particular point in a minute. Because again, it's a balance that I struggle with. Like, how much of it is me being a dinosaur and saying, well, you should know this because I had to know this, and how much of it is you need to know it, right? And I don't know the balance.
Right.
So you talked about you as a sort of your personality being the person that breaks stuff apart. Is there anything about your educational training other than this very cute VL4 technician? I totally get that. But
the light was cuter.
I love that answer. But about your educational preparation that sort of prepared you as well, or were you just lucky enough to have people who keyed into your innate curiosity?
My undergraduate degree is a BA in theater from Furman University. A small program. We were required to do everything. You were required to have had the crew head of every position on a show by the time you graduated. And I think that there is something to learning to do something, even if it means you're learning that you hate to do it. Don't ever ask me to do props. I think it makes my mind go numb, and it makes me have so much respect for people who do that. So I think there is something that is encouraging you to try things, to fail at it and have that be okay. That doesn't mean you fail the course. That means, hey, you figured out this isn't for you. And I think being bold and going to say, I don't know how to do this, but I want to figure it out, is something that should be encouraged more and isn't encouraged in their K through 12 education right now. So we have students who are coming to us without having been empowered to do that. So I do think, and it goes to, I think, what we're going to talk about some more, the difference between proficiency in gear and training and innovation and creator type career paths are two different things that may need two entirely different types of training.
Matt, how about you?
Dan Denhart at Ohio University.
Oh, Dan.
I got my BFA in actual scenic design, and then I got to OU as a scenic designer, and Ursula Belden, God rest her soul, said, hey, maybe you should do building of stuff. It's like, and it wasn't because my designs weren't good, but she saw where my motor ran. And she would look at my designs and my models, which spent way too much time on the model making and not so much on the design. And so man, my truss looked really good when I was doing a show. I think we did Sweeney Todd, and that bridge looked fantastic. But Dan, I would come to Dan, so I switched to the technical design, and Dan would say almost the same thing to me every time. Stop crying. Just figure it out. And if you don't want to figure it out, don't talk to me about it. And that's sort of, why are you crying? And I'm sorry, I wrote this down. I told him, I was writing down this, stop being so precious. And it's one of the things I want to tell, it's the people I tell, I don't use those words because those aren't nice, but the ones who work for me, just stop. It's on fire. Yeah, my fingers hurt too, but were you going to go home? Right? Is your job over? Are you going to quit? Or are you going to do the next thing, which is we got to solve why it's on fire? And that's what Dan taught me. No matter what it was, AutoCAD, I learned how to hand draw. And then I went and I think I was visiting a friend who was NYU, and they were doing drawing. And I came back, I said, man, we don't do computer drawing in theater. And he's like, stop crying. So I went and I just sat in on a class at the engineering, and they were doing CAD key. And then next year we got AutoCAD. But that was kind of the biggest thing that's driven me my whole career is don't cry about it, just do it. Because if you're not going to do it, you're in the wrong business. Because we're solution-based, we're opening date, we're get it on the truck, we're whatever it is. But don't waste your time worrying about what you can't do. Just figure it out. And same with when I'm talking about Autodesk and moving. I made the decision not to cry anymore and to learn how to direct people to use that resource. So I wasn't going to learn Inventor, and I was not going to learn Revit. I can poke around in it, but I said, okay, I'm going to know how it works so I can teach you you've been using it since you were in 5th grade, so okay, that kind of a thing.
So there's, I think it's fair to say, correct me if I'm wrong, that there's a bit of a through line of rigor, rigor and sort of lifelong learning willingness, right? Like, what else can I learn? How else can I learn something new? And this is an interesting pivot point for me that I want to sort of walk us all through. It's an inflection. I've sat through dozens of sessions about what should we be teaching people. And I've sat through dozens of conversations with folks like the three of you. What should we be teaching students to prepare them for their career in industry? And this is with folks in engineering as well. And we hear the same thing all the time. Lifelong learning skills, rigor, self-assessment, all those are great. Could I send someone to get a job with you if they've not learned drafting?
If they didn't have a clue?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Could someone get a job with you if they didn't know the basics of an audio system? Right? So, like, this is an interesting piece of tension, right? What are the essential skills? And what is a baseline? And what is too much technology or what is not enough technology? So the question I want to ask you next is, what is the one piece of discipline-specific technical skill information or knowledge or lists of equipment, whatever it is, that has been essential to your success? Like, could you have not lived without? This was not one I prepped them for, so I apologize. But I said we were going to vamp and riff, so now you learn to ad-lib, right?
I'll start. So keeping in mind, I work in architecture, but I have a theater background. So every single person who asks me that question, I want to get a job at your company, what should I learn? The answer, I'm sorry, is Revit. Revit is what you should.
No, I love it.
Yeah.
Not a master at it, but I love it.
Yeah, because that's the language that the industry of architecture uses. It's like saying I'm going to go to Japan and be a translator, but I don't speak Japanese. It's probably not going to work out that well, right? So my answer is Revit. And it used to be AutoCAD, but now it's Revit.
Did you learn Revit in school?
No, they didn't have it.
Didn't exist.
Okay. So
I learned AutoCAD here.
I knew that answer, but, and it was a leading question. So you learned AutoCAD here.
I did.
What is it about learning AutoCAD here that prepared you for Revit?
If I could have deleted everything I knew about AutoCAD in my brain and just started on Revit, it would have been a lot easier.
That's fair. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Because the
different.
whole thing is
Okay.
different. But
All right.
yeah, I don't know.
Kasey.
I think my answer is a little more complex simply because my career path has been so switchback and windy and has covered so many areas. The through line, if I'm being honest now about what makes me potentially very good at my multiple jobs is my business acumen, is my ability to budget and project manage. It's why almost always, even in my design times or my, my lead technician kind of times, the big projects were always my projects. My brain thinks in Excel and organizational, sort of sheets, and the ability to build timelines, It's why costumes for operas were, sort of my specialty. And so that has turned into, and chicken or the egg, whether it's because that's my skill set that I came to naturally, or whether I developed that skill set because I was going into management. I can't quite answer that, but I know that's the skill set that helps me be the president of the board of a nonprofit company. That's the skill set that helps me be the producer of, a theater season. Yeah.
Great.
I want to say drafting, but God, that sounds old. But I would say right now, you need to learn how to draw in at minimum Inventor. If you're a creative designer, Rhino or one of the ZBrush. I hate ZBrush, but it doesn't draw on scale. But still, even back for me, you gotta know how to use Inventor or SolidWorks. Parametric modeling, you gotta understand how that works. You don't have to be an expert at it, because that's why you can come to us and learn how to do it. But how to communicate with drawing, whatever it is. There isn't a single person who works in our creative or technical department that isn't a good communicator, and the digital stuff changes so fast. But Inventor, parametric modeling is here to stay until they stick the thing in your head and it kind of comes out on the page. Whatever your flavor is, Revit we need to use. It stinks for lots of things, but it's great for architecture. It stinks for what we do, but since we have to interface with architects in Disney and everyone else, we have 2 or 3 masters at it. But really, just the basics of communication through the visual medium, and drawing. I mean, having missed the start of AutoCAD saved my career. Having to know how to draw. Actually got my first Broadway job doing tour drawings on paper for Mike McCarty for some Broadway show that was going on tour. And I sat in his Williamsburg apartment while he drank all day, and I just redid plates, right? And because I knew how to draw by hand. And obviously not anymore, but how to communicate plan, section, like that sort of, that verbiage in whatever software you need to do. Yeah.
Okay. Evan, I saw your hand.
Yeah, so I guess, and you did start to answer that before I asked, but I guess for clarification, it's more important to have the principles behind using the software than to know, like, I need to know Revit to do this. I need to know the concepts and principles of architectural drawings to this. And then Revit is something that I can use to express that, but that is not necessarily.
And actually, unfortunately, it's gone farther, because Revit does stuff that you'll never learn in the basics of architecture, or parametric modeling does things that you would never learn in the old way of.
I love parametrics myself.
Right. It never would have come up. Revit brings up things that never would have come up, because those were things you worked out while you were standing on the floor in the empty building going, shoot, go there and then go over there, those kinds of things. And parametric modeling allows you to have ideas that used to take 14 hours in AutoCAD. What happens if I do 7-inch centers, right? And then let's run a RISA computation on it to see if that just destroys the integrity of the section. Okay, it's cool, let's do that.
Yeah.
How about to 12? How about to, and again, we were going to talk about this, it's the brain part that I think is completely required. You have to think that way, but you have to be open to thinking that way. But you have to come out of school using one of the 3 or 4 major softwares, or no one's going to look at you. If you're working for an architecture firm, your first job is going to be plopping doors down on a 30-story apartment building, right? That's just, or you're going to be doing cut files for CNC, right? And if you don't know how to use AutoCAD or how to pop it out of SolidWorks or Inventor, so you have to know those things. But more important is how to communicate with that thing, because it's about as effective as this microphone in showing how to make a flat if you don't know how to communicate, right? Like, this is what it is, guys, it's a square, and it's got this and that kind of a thing. Yeah, but you gotta check, because obviously in 10 minutes it'll be an Autodesk, it'll be SolidWorks, some, Rhino, one of those, depending on which end of the universe you're on. You have to know how to use one of those, because I can transfer someone from SolidWorks to Inventor, still parametric modeling, and you just have to be comfortable in that universe. Us old people, we just have to be comfortable to know that you're doing it correctly for us, not how you got it there.
I think remembering that the technology is still a tool, and it needs the experience and expertise of having worked in the industry, knowing the show, knowing the challenges, knowing where we continuously have a pitfall, where something's going to be a time suck. I mean, I have plenty of software that can project manage for me that doesn't know. In my scene shop, the problem is it's not big enough for our theater space and I'm going to run out of real estate. So project managing something, there are parameters that I can't put into that software that I have to manage and that I have to be aware of that will make things flow smoother.
So these are all fascinating things for us to keep in mind coming into the next section. And because I want to pivot again to talk about a slightly different question, but some takeaways, I think, are the importance of a generalist approach versus a specialist approach. And even within a specialist approach, what does that mean in terms of education? Like, what specialize in what, and how specialized do you get? So things for us to think about. And then level of proficiency. Excuse me. How much is it too much to ask somebody who's done 4 years of school to be proficient? Like, how proficient is possible in 4 years of schooling in different parts of what we might want to teach? So things that carry over into the next session. In the 15 or 20 minutes or so we have left, I did want to ask, what do you see coming down the pipe in the next 5 or 10 years that might be the next surprise? What are you sort of predicting? We won't show this tape in 5 or 10 years. Tape, like we're recording on tape. You don't have tape back there, do you?
It's a
right?
time
Oh my
capsule.
God. We won't pull the hard disk bytes out in 5 or 10 years. But what do you see coming down the road that maybe we want to be sure students are being prepared for? Anybody can start.
Well, I think I will start with the higher ed point of view, because there are significant this is not predictive, we know it's coming. Population drop-off, enrollment drop-off in higher ed. Higher ed is in for a reckoning right now. And, not to be like the doomsday crier out in the square, we know it's coming, and we know that the university system is going to have to change. I think there is conversation about that. I think there is competition about that. There is a scarcity of resources, the resources being students enrolling at university. That means a scarcity of resources for industry a few years later when we're not producing as many graduates trained in whatever. So that's the reason to have this conversation today. What are, and we've been having it in my groups at least as we've talked, and I think it's worth continuing, because I think the question of innovation also has to be innovation of the workforce pipeline, and how we are developing talent if our industry is going to survive. And I say that as an if. If our industry is going to innovate and develop, what does that look like? I think COVID threw us kind of a warning shot that got us prepared to have this conversation now, as we're really talking about sort of a global change, or at least I would say a Western Hemisphere change in population. and shift, and how people are consuming. There are so many conversations to be had, and I say that, not as something we should be afraid of. There are some daunting prospects of it, but it's another opportunity for us to do a little self-assessment and figure out new things and new ways, and not just be the olds up here saying, we've always done it this way. So that's mine.
So the end of the world, that's what Kasey sees coming.
No.
Thanos is coming.
The
That's-
brave new world that we're going to create.
Yes, absolutely. But I think you're right. COVID certainly accelerated some trends that were already starting, including I was telling somebody earlier today, we are in the largest contraction of the not-for-profit live theater industry in 20 years, right? That's just worth knowing and being aware of. And for those in academia, the enrollment cliff, people stopped making babies, and the babies that were made stopped wanting to go to college. That's coming.
And a degree quit guaranteeing a job in the way that it did, in my generation.
Yeah.
Getting your degree was, and it didn't matter what it was in, getting the degree was a milestone because it was going to get you a job. And now,
It doesn't guarantee anything anymore.
Nope.
Yeah. Ian or Matt?
I would say the conversational nature of machine interaction is going to be the minute that we can throw the keyboard and mouse in the garbage and we can just converse with the light, there won't be a board, the lighting system, the sound system, or, this can be taken to whatever level you can imagine. But I think probably the next iteration will be interacting, through AI with everything that we have, and we won't have these human device interaction things anymore,
That text-to-speech and the AI
That actually works.
translation, you're right, that has advanced huge in just even the last 5 years. Sure. Matt, what do you got?
So I kind of work in the dinosaur of the universe, physical stuff. And I've heard for almost as long as I've been in the business. First it was HD. That is going to ruin everything, and you're never going to paint anything again because they're going to be able to tell it's fake, and that never happened. And that VR was going to take over the universe, and that never happened. And so I don't want to be like poo-poo the future. I know that there's a place for physical touch in the entertainment business forever. Now, for sound, and I think the same in costume, right?
Yeah.
The projection of costume, while interesting and neat and everything, it's not, that's not, I don't think, where it's going. I think the biggest thing for us is to not be scared of what's going to happen. I have 4 robots in my facility. 3 of them are generic-y CNC, and then I have a car-making robot that cars for me. And then I have 5 or 6 other robots that print for us. We're getting a big one soon, like a Massive or one of those. But to not lose where we come from. So what I see in the future is my stuff, I think, will actually become a little more important because to the reaction of what's happening in your universe, that you will just stand there and talk to a receiver of some sort and it will do what you want. I can't do that with rockwork. I can't do that with a door. A door's a door is a door. So it'll be interesting to see how some of our universe goes in one direction, where, I still have trouble and we have conversations at work about what AI means for us. The problem with AI for us is that to scrape that information, basically there's 7 companies in the country that we would scrape the information from, maybe 20 small scene shops and Yale, you know what I mean? And that's your information. And so I don't see that really happening very efficiently because PRG doesn't want me to know how they do stuff. And the only way that AI works is they scrape your stuff, they scrape my stuff, and they scrape Tate's stuff, and then they ask questions about it and they get answers. And I don't think there are enough people. There isn't enough information about what we do to make it viable, certainly for you. I mean, because audio is everywhere, outside of entertainment. Ours is not. I mean, I'm a pretty closed society, right? We go to amusement parks and museums, and it's the entertainment universe. So I just would rather us not lose focus on what we do, and not run away scared. It is going to be scary, and it already is harder to get students. I don't want to say anything bad about millennials, but it's different, right?
Yeah.
They're different.
Yeah.
They're coming with different information, expectations, and it's going to get, I don't want to say worse, but it's going to be even more. Maybe that's what I don't know is coming, is what the students or the younger workers are going to bring to us, and will it work in the way that we see our universe mind of don't cry, just get it done.
Sure.
In 10 years, will that work?
Sure. Yeah. No, I think
Will
that's
they just turn around and go, well, I'm not working for you, which has already
Yeah,
happened.
then I don't want that job.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and we've got, I think, 15 minutes left. So there's so many more things that I wanted to say and ask you about, but I want to give some time for you all to ask some questions. So, and if you don't have any, I can just keep talking. So, feel free not to ask any. But I'm not that interesting. Okay.
No, I have a question for our friends from
Yeah.
Spain. What are your students like? What are your students like? And what is the pathway? As I understand Europe, the apprenticeship pathway is more prevalent to get into technical theater, to work at a theater. What are your theater students like? What are they? Do we have the same troubles that we do?
Actually, we are from an engineering school, so
Yeah.
they are
Okay.
very engineer-based.
Okay.
You get the idea. Very technical, and we already we still don't have a theater engineering or entertainment engineering, so that's why we are here,
Okay.
like learning what is it, because I think that there's nothing similar in Europe. Okay. Of course, there are vocational training programs about techniques for theater, lighting, sound, but there's nothing at the higher education level still. And we are planning to do that from the engineering school side, but we have to search for a partner on the art part.
Gotcha.
And that would be challenging because drama schools, even cinema schools, do not belong to universities. I would say in Europe, but at least in Spain, do not belong to. They are higher education institutions, but outside classical university. It's like art or school of arts, but do not belonging to university, but independent.
Gotcha.
Okay, so that
Conservatory
works for
type.
music, that works for drama, that works for cinema, but not for art, because art and painting, sculpture is inside universities, but music, and I think it's more a traditional thing. So
Conservatory is what we would call
yeah,
it.
that's it. That's it. But
No, you're fine.
conservatories, but they moved to.
Yeah.
It was conservatories, but they made a reform to uniform as a higher degree. Then conservatories are like upper secondary, and then you have higher education in this new institution. It's still not inside university, but it's it's strange.
Yeah.
We will have to deal with that, and here to learn. So that's why we are here.
So do you have your engineering students that have seen a rock show, and said, I want to make the boat, I want to make, the stuff that Tate does?
We have
Like,
some
Yeah.
alumni.
Let's be honest.
We have
Yeah.
alumni working on the industry. So a couple of them working in Cirque du Soleil. Okay, and very good ones, in fact. And one contacted us and said, you have to think about running a program like that, because my colleagues coming from the States, some of them have heard about these programs, and they find Purdue program very interesting, UConn very interesting, so other programs, and that's why we are here. So learning, we also have to see if, I think the industry in Europe is quite different, and the way they work, and maybe more creative and less project-based, or I don't know. We have to, but that's why we are here. Huh?
Well, regarding the discussion that you had lately, I wanted to say that for us it's very similar. Our students have a very hands-on approach. So regarding of how much we have to go deep in the fundamentals teaching, I think it's important because they are not going to learn the fundamentals in the industry. The industry expects that they have already the fundamentals. And if they have to learn SolidWorks or another computer program or whatever, I think they will have the opportunity to do that when they are starting to work. So yeah, my way of thinking is that we don't have to lose the fundamentals, but maybe we have to choose different disciplines because the way it is changing. Maybe we have to teach more computing or more AI. I don't know. We have to think about that. But I think it's not specific for theater. It is something that we share in any discipline. Okay, so that's it.
Other questions or comments from out there? Can I drop something on, this is a thing that I like to do, right? We'll have a whole conversation, then I'm gonna drop a bomb in the middle of the room and say, talk about it and think about it. It's just a thing I end up doing. And it's sort of related, Ian, to what you said about eventually keyboards are gonna go away and fader interfaces, and it's just gonna be text to speech or whatever. And we were talking about these, right? The proliferation of this stuff. My father-in-law works for a major international bank. He is a COBOL programmer. His job, anybody who remembers computer programming, you're like, oh my gosh, COBOL. Our photographer is understands COBOL programming. That's fantastic. His job is to transfer databases for banking systems from COBOL to new programming languages.
Something modern, yes.
He's like the only guy who knows, right? But those systems still exist. And increasingly, I have students who don't have any comprehension of how this works. Mercer's, we had a whole class on some of this stuff, right? Show controls, and we talked about, maybe it was your class or the year after, like, do you understand all the steps that are involved in tracking your finger across the screen and how you program that? And a worry that I have, and I think it maybe is an interesting point of discussion for a few minutes, when we get to that point, when everything is just talked to the machine and the sound system does its thing, who knows how to make it work when it breaks? Or who knows how to redevelop it once it's all gone? When the end of the world comes and we have to rebuild entertainment technology from scratch, like, what is our obligation or our commitment or our expectation around making sure that some of that knowledge that all of the new stuff is based on is retained? And what does that mean? I'm just gonna throw that out, there it is, there's a bomb, there's a grenade. Talk amongst yourselves, what do we think about that? And how does that impact some of the conversations we've had here and the conversations we're gonna have in a minute? Do you guys have thoughts about that?
I think there is always a place for bespoke artistry that never sort of is gonna go away. I say this again, going back to there hasn't been innovation in costuming since the sewing machine, and yet there has been. There are things that seem to be dying arts that never quite die. And is it rare? Yes, but I feel like we go on the roller coaster of, we're gonna lose this thing. This animal is about to go extinct, and we're gonna save it. You know, something like, I work at one of the few universities that still teaches costume students how to make classical tutus. Because we have a classical ballet program that we produce. And is that a dying art? Yes, but it ain't dead yet. And it won't be while people still need to learn that. It's not a thing yet that a machine can do. I mean, there are crappy tutus that a machine robot can put together. But a true classical tutu and what that has to look like, and how that is built, and the amount of hours that goes into that sort of bespoke tailoring. I think it is a balance, and I think there are things that will be maintained, that will survive the apocalypse, and maybe come back into fashion. You'd all look beautiful in tutus, so. I think there is a balance of what technology can do and what a machine can do for you, and what requires still the human artistry.
And I wonder too, if like any technological evolution, something else new comes into play that then requires a different way of going about it and going, thinking. Like we don't use cassette tapes anymore, we don't even use CDs anymore, but like we still record music and like mass produce it for
I
people
thought you were gonna
gather.
say, we still record CAD files. Because we did used to use tape, so.
Like things like that, like there's something else that comes onto the scene that then just requires we retool the way we think about it. I mean, I do worry that like personally, like ChatGPT could be making me dumber because it's so convenient to do things, but like, is it just changing the way I think about things and it's not actually dumbing us down? It's just forcing us to reconsider and redo things in a bit of a different way. That's what, I don't know the answer, but you know what I mean? Like maybe things do die. Like maybe
Right.
the evolution happens and it's like, oh, here the animal's gonna die, and it does, but it gets replaced by something else.
I mean, I think that's the point I was making with Kasey, is like, how much is me just being a dinosaur and saying everybody needs to know this, right?
Right.
I don't know the answer to that.
So from the technology standpoint, I just wanted to share something that you're all probably familiar with the Millennium Big Fireworks Show at Epcot. That ran on a DOS-based system for as long as possible.
Illuminations, reflections of Earth.
Are you familiar?
Brian, right behind you.
Oh, is it off?
It's
I
off.
wonder.
Yeah, so many of those systems, and there are so many places out there. The reason I share that is because that show was kept running on eBay because no one else had the parts, and one of the largest entertainment companies in the world was buying things off of eBay to keep one of its major shows running. So,
Instead of doing a full revamp.
well, and also trailing edge technology sometimes has an advantage because we know how it works and how often it breaks.
And how to fix it.
And it's
So,
secure.
so it's one of those
And
that,
it's
and it's secure. So that's always interesting to me, of the advantages of trailing edge technology. And I'm still mad about the mini disc player I installed in my car, thinking that was the next big thing.
Did you use FireWire?
I did mini disc too, I hear you. You want to hand that to Eben? Eben, and then we'll do Mercer.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm also very optimistic as a industry and as part of an art form that has been going through ups and downs for millennia, that people have said is dying off or is not there. As long as there are stories and people tell them there's going to be a need for us. And with regards to like the black box of like students not knowing necessarily how a phone works, of pretty much any industry, we are the ones who are going to take things from other industries and we're going to break them open and find out how they work and find out how to repurpose them for what we do. Because that is the only way we can afford to do it, and that is the only way we can keep things moving, is by taking, adulterating, using, and repurposing. So I think that we're going to be fine. Is it going to be the same thing that we do now? Absolutely not. It's going to be different, and there's going to be different skill sets needed. But I think that it's still going to evolve, and people are going to still tinker and find ways to use, abuse, and misuse things.
And I just want to say, from our perspective, you would think that scenic painters weren't needed. We used to do 100-foot by 60-foot drops for the Met, and that started to slowly go when digital printing came in. They would get them printed at cheaper places. And then all of a sudden, Universal needed 250 scenic artists to paint Dionne Alley. So we're like, same exact skill set. And so you just have to be ready. This is in my sort of dinosaur universe of hands and solid things. to move it around. When CNC came out, everyone's like, oh, the carpenter's not on the floor. You go, no, I'm just gonna get you to pop out 4 times as much stuff. And we'll get more work, and and you will all, I was at Hudson when they got their Gerber. And one of my first jobs was running that machine. And I had people throw tools at it because they thought that was the end of their life. I was at the end in the South Bronx. I was at the end of the carpentry deck, and they used to throw stuff at it to try to break it because they thought I was taking their job. We had our 2 biggest years when that machine first came out, because I was doing pounces for drops. I was doing decks, and we could do 20 decks in a year instead of 15, right? And we could then, Neil could say, we could do that much more work, because I don't have to lay it out by hand. And, and to be honest, the layout guys were all retiring anyway. So they just were, right? It's a natural, scene shops go through natural washes of, we just went through one. We have all new foremen, and those new foremen have brought skills in that we never had before, but they don't have some of the skills that the foremen before them had. So it's interesting in non the sound and not those automation. Ours is such grunty, you just have to kind of just, everyone relax, and let's figure out what the new universe is asking us to do, instead of running around and saying AI is going to ruin everything or whatever it is.
I think this whole conversation still sort of gets back to the crux of what we were talking about. Like, what do we need to teach? What do we not need to teach? It's interesting you mentioned scenic artists, because a question that has been running through my head the last few years is, how much do we need to teach traditional scenic paint mixing techniques when I can take the designer's rendering and go to the local big box store, hold it under the laser, and they'll give me the color, right? And there's a part of me that's really sad about that. Purdue, we're really fortunate that we've got a very traditional scenic painter. He's been painting for decades. If you have worked in the East Coast, he's the painter who paints in a 3-piece suit, right? Some of you may recognize that description of Jake Wood. Are his skills going away? I don't know. Do we still need to teach those?
When Kirsty from Disney comes and gets to mix paint in your shop and has the most fun she's had in 4 months, I just got myself $60 million worth of more work. Just
Sure.
because of our dinosaur version of things.
Yeah.
That's why we need to keep teaching those skills.
Sure.
You're not going to paint your drops. You're not going to be Melziner in his suit
Right.
with the chalk on the bamboo and that's not how it works anymore. But you still get to do all of those skills, and you get to go hang out in Orlando, or I'll send you to China, or, right,
When I tried to make an argument for years that the editing, the actual cutting of magnetic tape and splicing, and the finding that one blurb 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 sound that was the moment, was key to understanding how to edit in visual waveform editing, right? Like, that was the argument I made to myself, is you can't really understand that until you understand that. I don't really think that that's true anymore. I'm looking at my colleague Mercer.
No,
I don't think
I'm sending that reel-to-reel deck to surplus, by the way.
right, like, you don't, do you really need that? And so this is a really, really challenging question. Like, what skills do we let die? And what do we replace them with? And in that greater context of, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, I have 40 credit hours of time to teach theater students theater skills, right? That is 13 1/3 classes. That's it, in a 4-year degree. Like, how do you make that all work? You were going to say something, and we talked right over you.
Yeah, this may or may not be relevant anymore, but we'll give it a shot anyway. When, Ian, you were talking about kind of, the potential future transition from audio control surfaces to a box of who knows. I started immediately thinking about the automotive industry, because my car no longer has an oil dipstick, which means I can't test to see if my oil level is correct myself. And so anytime any work has to be done, we're going to the dealership. And that concerns me, that all of our gear may be heading in that direction, that we can't repair, we can't maintain, we have to send everything, back to the manufacturer to get firmware updated, or to solve problems that we could solve in the past. And so
I think we as practitioners, we as the people using the gear, need to keep the pressure on these manufacturers to say, I still want to be able to check the oil. Great, I'm glad the car can drive itself, but by God, I want to know, but before we do a show that, you know, that my oil level is correct. And kind of while I still have the microphone, one other, and this might tie in the next session, one other thing that I've noticed is students have a really hard time finding the information that they need themselves these days. You know, and then they'll come to me and say, how do you do this on this piece of equipment? And I'm like, what is wrong with this thing? That you can type that exact question into Google and somebody will show you how to do this on video. It's like we need to be fostering those skills to continue to have our smart technical students be able to find the information they need and quickly. Because nobody knows everything, and you know that continual learning and improvement thing is real.
Jen, did you have your hand up? While you hand the mic over, I'm just going to ask Kasey, who talked about taking stuff apart. Do you remember the no user serviceable parts inside stickers that we used to slice open, right? Just to Mercer's point, like there have always been sort of those barriers to the end user opening up stuff. I broke open many of those tapes.
Yes, yeah. In fact, those tapes are an invitation.
Right? Like, I bet there's something in there I can do, yeah.
But I do think it goes to your question of how much do I need you to understand that this is how it used to work? And talking about DMX, DMX will die at some point given the trends where we're going, someday maybe. Do I really need my students to know that I used to have to program each channel for each attribute? No. I mean, beyond, I understand that that's kind of what all of these pre-programmed things are doing for me. I need them to do more than just take the factory settings, right? So what's the balance between, you know, just my car at its regular automatic setting versus when I put it in sport mode and want to go really fast.
I'm old school. I bought a stick shift because I needed to be able to do it. Jen, go ahead.
I'm thinking about, so like hearing this conversation about like what technologies are going to have moved on and what are dying, et cetera. And like one of the things that's fundamentally true in the history and philosophy of technology is that there's never actual revolution, as in like a system entirely goes away, that there's always continuity with change, right? Mm-hmm. But I think one of the things that's hard for us as educators is that it's hard for us to know what skills and knowledge is necessary for finding that continuity. And it's hard for us to know what's happening. Somebody mentioned up there about K through 12 and like, you know, understanding the kinds of guidance and lack of guidance and pressures that our students are coming in with. And so I'll give you a really quick, for example, in computing, I was really surprised when I learned that my Gen Z, like digital natives, had no idea what a file was or a file structure. Like they don't know that files go into directories that are stored on a hard drive. And it was like, well, we don't teach that because that's fundamental. Like everyone knows that because everyone who was my age grew up playing with it, right? So like, I'm sorry that I'm not an engineer, so a lot of what y'all have said today is going, whew. But what I do understand is education. And so I think one of the things that I just wanted to say was to remind us that as educators, we're going to have to continually interrogate what we're assuming people know in the same way that you have to tell them where the hammer doesn't go. Great. What else is there that we just assume is fundamental knowledge because of our experience, but isn't for the current students because of their experience, right? And like, we're never gonna get a list, unfortunately. Right. I wish we did, but we're not.
It's a little bit on us to assess some of that, and I think, I will say I've had this conversation at USITT as we're thinking about programming our professional development education. Honest to goodness, if you're trying to teach students, early career individuals, in the method that you learned it, that I learned it, if I'm trying to teach for what my brain needed, I'm not effectively educating. Because what they are coming in the door with is an entirely different mindset, an entirely different world experience, advanced skills compared to what I had and deficient skills compared to what I had. And so if you are developing your curricula based on what somebody who's your peer, your 50-year-old peer, needs to learn, that's not going to work for the 18-year-old walking in your door.
Lest we forget, now that the monsoon season of information has begun, that our students must learn critical thinking, because they can go find the information, but now the problem has gone from, in my generation, the central problem was finding the information or having to synthesize the information.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's having to filter the information, because there's a whole lot of bad information.
Yeah.
And so some degree of critical thinking and to be able to be self-critical is crucial, I think, for a lot of what we do in the technology area when it comes to bespoke applications, because we're not designing by committee. You know, we're all lone wolves sitting behind a CAD screen, and in order to produce quality work in a very tight time frame, which is the central problem, we need to be able to self-edit as we work. And so to be able to filter through ideas in a self-critical way, I think is important. So whatever exercises, processes, pedagogical strategies we leverage to try and foster the ability to do that, that's one of the things I struggle with.
Mm-hmm.
I think that also thank you. Our industry is very well placed for dealing with the filtering of bad information, because we have a long and proud history of using bad information backstage, of disregarding best practices and safety, and the goal of making sure that the show goes on, and that, like, you know, being proud of working for 20 hours a day or whatever nonsense that was still very popular when I was in college 20 years ago. That filtration, that need to filter the information for a healthy and productive life and career has kind of been there. And, you know, if nothing else, we are more attuned than most to dealing with just truly awful information being thrown at us, and then trying to find the correct nuggets from it.
I think that is a fantastic place to take a breather, unless there's any last words from our panelists up there. No? I'm putting you on the spot. You don't have to have any.
No, I will say, it actually, just a little bit of what you just said made me think of how often we use materials not how they were intended to be used. We are an industry of innovation. And sometimes remembering that and encouraging, like, you know, yeah, cut through that tape that says don't go here. And, you know, I don't know, as a costume designer who's walked into the Home Depot to figure out a material that's going to make the architectural costume that I want, and, you know, the guy always asks, what are you going to use it for? And I go, oh.
I run away from all of them in Home Depot.
You don't,
ask me
just
questions,
don't, I'm just browsing. I'm just,
Why do you have something from plumbing and shelving? And
yes.
Do a three-word reply that will just shut down the discussion. It's an art project.
That's it. Well,
Just say, it's an art project. Just turn and walk away. Every time.
Yep, yep.
I would for the people in the academic universe, I have 35 years of my mistakes and my fixes for those mistakes all over the world. So that my biggest, and that's what your students should think about, is that every time we hit a problem, we solve it, and that's the don't cry, just get it done. But that don't be scared that you don't know and that you're not sure it's going to work, because all through New York City are versions of what I thought might work, and then my fixes when they didn't really work, and in Las Vegas, and in right, and that happens on the biggest projects. And don't be scared that the thing you came up with crashed on the ground, because our whole universe is filled with that. All of us have done it, made it better, or made it acceptable for the show, or, you know, whatever it is. That's the biggest thing for, and it's one of the things that, when I was at TA, so many years ago, I tried to get them to all think about it. It's like, just do it. Don't fall on your face. No one cares.
Yeah.
Right?
There's no killing them.
It's not, as my graduate friend Brian used to say, it's not rocket surgery, right? Like just, even though you guys in PRG, and we sometimes make fake rockets and do make things fly.
I'm like, yeah, flying pink is very different than like saving lives and stomping out disease, guys. Like,
Right.
it's-
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's take it where it's at, you know? Like,
And enjoy the fact that you're
we're not
flying
curing cancer.
pink.
Yeah.
And that I made a fake interior of the Millennium Falcon. Like, I could
Okay, you
put
can't
that-
just
I
drop
could
that
put
before
on
we're
my
going to
list,
take a break. You can't,
right?
now
I
because
can
people
put
want to
that
know
on
that
my
story.
list, And you don't get to do that
Right.
anywhere else. In any other universe, you can't say, I made 6 interiors. Actually, I made 12 because we did in two places
There you
of
go.
the Millennium Falcon.
I had the chance to talk to the one of the video folks who worked. I'm assuming you're talking about the Rise of Rebellion or the Smugglers Run, right?
Smugglers Run.
He said, "Yeah, I did the video work. I was the 4th person alive to fly the Millennium Falcon, right? Because he did the first test. I'm like Han Solo, Lando Calrissian, Chewbacca, and Rey. Like seriously? All right, yeah, first real person to actually do it. Yeah, okay." That's a great place to stop. We're going to take a 15-minute break. There's food over there. We'll see you over there in just a few minutes.